Michael, I know you can be succinct. Go.
Michael Crandell, CEO, RightScale.
How was that? Succinct. Come along, sir. Treb.
Treb Ryan, CEO, OpSource.
Oh, I like this. Cory.
Cory Isaacson, CEO and CTO of CodeFutures. So there you go.
Hi, Brad Hokamp, President of Layer Tech.
Lawrence.
Guillory with Racemi, the image management company.
Andy Burton, CEO of Rise.
Paulo Rosado, CEO of OutSystems.
So there we have some of the highest lines. If a bomb were to drop now, heaven forbid, on the channel, the cloud would come down by the end of this lunchtime. It would be a terrible thing. Gentlemen, we seem to have reached a bit of an inflection point. Business meets cloud, meets customers. It's too good to be true. We've had security problems. We seem to be standing tall still. We're agreeing it's all going to correct itself. What am I missing? What is the fly in the ointment, gentlemen? You're CEOs, you have to be realistic. These guys will come from your companies if you can tell them, first off, what's the fly in the ointment that we just back in 2011? What's missing? You can jump in whoever comes first. Whoever looks like they can take this thread.
I got it. Yeah. I mean, obviously everything's moving this direction, but it's still, let's be blunt, still an immature technology. You know, it took 20 years. You know, I say we're at the 386 stage of PCs. You know, you weren't going to run your financials yet on a 386, right? You need to have a lot more infrastructure go into place, and we're seeing that now in cloud. But it doesn't solve every problem yet. You know, there's from a performance issue and a price ratio. Those things still need to get solved. But what's amazing is the pace of change is so quick in this space that we could have this conversation in 6 months and it'd be a whole set of different issues. I mean, they could well be resolved by the time we all hit Santa Clara.
Right. Treb says that the cloud doesn't solve every problem. How was he smoking? Of course it does.
Yeah, the big issue we see at Layer Tech in the market overall is compliance and security. And we actually gave a presentation on this a couple days ago. Compliance and security is the most important element if you want to move it into enterprise and for cloud to realize, you know, full market potential. So the focus, kind of the missing element is actually the orchestration around building the security model on top of the public and private clouds. And not just the firewall, you know, the firewall rule sets and those elements, but it's all the security elements, the file integrity monitoring, the different elements there, intrusion detection, et cetera. So what needs to mature, especially for the public cloud side, is the orchestration level of cloud for all those security tool sets. And then following through on that with compliance management, change management, log management, so that discipline. Layer Tech, not to promote Layer Tech too much, but we do all that for most of our clients. So we think that's kind of the missing element for, again, for...
Missing, lagging, let's say lagging.
Lagging.
Let's not depress because people energize them about the cloud. Lagging element, does that make sense, Michael?
Well, you know, I agree with what Treb said about being in the infancy of the change. It's a very disruptive change. We call it a tidal shift in the way IT infrastructure is deployed and consumed. We'll see over the next 10 years increasing growth. It's been growing extremely fast already. But in addition to the fact that it's in its infancy, there are a number of pioneers out there, and I would say those in the room, you're among them just by virtue of being here. I think I saw a statistic from Forrester Research that 6% of IT professionals at larger company were already using cloud. That means there are 94% that aren't.
Very nice statistic, that one.
But I think those who are already engaged with cloud are doing amazing things. As you know, Jeremy, we're co-hosting here with CC Expo our RightScale user conference right next door. You're all cordially invited. If you have time, go take a look. It's free. We have 16 breakout sessions going concurrently this afternoon, and many of them touch on real use cases that are fascinating. It's very compelling to see what actual customers are really doing with production systems today.
Andy, how are we going to get the 94 missing percent into the cloud? That's what you're doing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think I would reset the question slightly in terms of the way we're answering this, because to me, the biggest thing we're focusing with the technology of cloud is not technology. It is the change required to business process. So, yeah,
technology cloud, 7 cloud expos, of course, centered around that, and suddenly, not awesome, but magnificently at 8,000.
Yeah, but we're in a divergent phase of the market. You know, as markets go through life phases, and we're in a phase where more and more entrants are coming into the market. So the amount of noise going into the market and the confusion that sometimes our industry language brings to the customer is a bit of a challenge when you're trying to determine what it is you're actually trying to achieve. And I would say the biggest challenge about adoption is not about maturity of technology. It's not about on-prem versus in cloud. It's about confidence of the business model and how do I transition when I'm already invested on-prem into the cloud, and what do I transition first, and how do I actually go through that process. So to me, and certainly what we've seen based on evidence of research, is that those people that try the cloud, the satisfaction level is extremely high, and they tend to try the cloud in the first instance on a project, on an initiative where they're looking for flexibility, a quick turnaround, etc. They're so satisfied with it that what they're doing is then advancing their input, and we're seeing, you know, on average, one in every 2 companies has got some kind of trial going on in the cloud at the moment in time.
One of your peers here stole your thunder. They summed it all up, and so they nailed why it is that the cloud is going so well.
I think one of the issues that we've seen in a lot of these IT departments that are moving to the cloud is a tremendous disruption in terms of the skill set, and the fact that they're losing control, and the typical fight of the DBA that can no longer control a lot of things that they used to do. And I think what's happening with the cloud is that this disruption is happening at a very fast pace. And a lot of these functions that you used to do in a certain way now need to be done completely in a different way, remotely, where a lot of these things that you used to control and feel are now under the hood in some form remotely. And a lot of these guys need to adjust to that, need to create that trust level and the industry, the cloud industry in a sense, needs to create that credibility level so that the IT guys can really change, can really adopt these disruptions in process.
George, are we there? Is that credibility established?
Well, I think we're there, but we're not there, and it depends on the audience here. So real quick poll, how many people have right now a production application in the cloud that you trust to your business and end users for driving revenue? Raise your hand. So that's, you know, that is your pioneers and early adopters right there. And so the real problem is everybody that didn't raise their hand. You're the mainstream adopter. So I would argue that this Thursday, at the close of the show, is the beginning of crossing the chasm into the mainstream audience. And that becomes the problem that we're all talking about, is everything in the entire ecosystem that brings cloud to the market has to be solved for the mainstream user, because the mainstream user is not the folks that raise their hand. Those were the brave souls.
Raise your hand if you didn't raise your hand.
So those are the folks that will code at night, code on the weekend, deal with issues, look at Amazon, you know, dropping the ball there and say, okay, that's all right. They're going to get stronger for it. The rest of the folks in the room said, I'm not up for that, and that's not what I'm interested in. It's got to be simple. It's got to be convenient. It's got to be easy. And that's kind of where Racemi comes in, and looking at partners. We're a partner-type company where our technology and software captures the full server image, migrates it into the cloud. There's no rebuilding or anything. And so that's our unique part of the ecosystem. But I think everybody here delivers something along that lines of making it simple and convenient for the mainstream adoption. And that's going to be interesting for the next 3 to 4 years and how we solve that problem.
That's a great point, though. I think that it's funny, we focused all on security in high performance. That was our gig, right? We're going to do compliance. We're going to address a lot of these issues. We went to market with that. The number one thing in all of our literature that drives more traffic and more signups is the word easy. And it's so funny because we built in layers of audit policy-based controls and all the different things you could do to really nail down your security and your environments and stuff. And the things that people picked up on were the easy parts. And it is. Actually, now we say easy security in those things because that's what people really love about it. What's amazing is you think about that 94% of the people who are using cloud.
You see how they're thinking? Just like
right.
All thinking about that.
What we forget is a good portion of that 94% don't even know what you can do with it. I mean, honest to goodness, you actually show someone what you can do when you spin up a server in RightScale or OpSource, and it takes you, 5 minutes, and you can replicate it 1,000,000 times and use it for an hour and turn it off. And they look, that's what I can do in the cloud? Over and over and over again, we see that. I think people hear about the cloud, And they often hear that, hey, I can do this stuff out there, but they're worried about the complexity, they're worried about how will I actually implement it, and they get intimidated. More than we know. And when we show people what it can do, it's amazing. And they go, wow, that's really easy. It's really straightforward. You have to get over the comfort of security. You have to get over the comfort of it not being under my roof anymore. But that's really a generational thing. You know, anybody young enough is going to not care where it sits, right?
Cory, is all those hands going up, make it easier for you to get out of bed in the morning as a CEO?
It is, because it means we have a lot of market to grow into, right? That's very, very good. But my question would be, how many of you have critical, mission-critical databases that are relational databases that sit underneath your applications, and who has any worries about supporting those databases in a cloud environment where, well, frankly, things can happen that you might not want to have happen? Like servers can go down, networks can go down. So that, we think, is the biggest issue, actually, is how can we make the databases scale and work in a cloud environment, right? And that's a big, big challenge, because there's nothing that will work in the cloud without a database, right? I mean, if anybody has an application without a database, fine, but most applications require some sort of data access, especially enterprise ones.
What is the word in English for asking a question to which my company is the answer?
We're all very good at that. We've been rehearsing. That's right.
That's fine. It's a good thing. Michael, you were trying to jump in, I saw.
I was just going to, I'm going to ask for another show of hands. Seems to be the pattern today.
We're going to have lunch instead.
The pattern today, but along the lines of what you were talking about, Treb, we find it's very common that customers and prospects have what we call the aha moment, or the light bulb moment, when they finally get what's so compelling about cloud infrastructure, the easy access, but also the predictability and reliability of how you run workloads. We have one customer that deploys both in an internal data center and in the cloud. The internal data center is sort of a traditional method. They get 100% success launching new projects in the cloud, meaning that the behavior of the workloads is as expected. They get 85% success internally, because when you build it from scratch up through ordering servers, racking them, and deploying everything, something's different this time. Some detail along the way changes, and by the time you install the app, it doesn't work right.
So what's the question?
So the question is, how many of you have had an aha moment in terms of using cloud?
They're going to be very shy about that, I can tell you. That's not going to work. No, put it a little bit higher. I think this is the closest these aha people
That looked about 6% to me.
Well, I can answer that, because also we have found that we have to have very, very predictable infrastructure to deploy a database reliably and make sure that we get the same thing in each place. And I can say that we depend very successfully on RightScale to do that, so it's worked out very, very well for us. But it is a critical issue in the cloud, is to be able to make sure that you can deploy things over and over again and make sure that they're going to operate as you expect. And it's not a trivial problem, and having a good tool set and infrastructure to do that has been a very big barrier to adoption.
All right, now I know the audience is just crying out for me to curtail you being company CEOs for a moment. I'm thinking you're vaguely interested in technology, but you seem to be like stand-up guys. So let me just say, we'll start with you, Paulo, and work back towards me. What happened only a week, what happened in the week to you personally that made you very grateful for the fact that cloud computing is now in year 3 or 23, if you're a great guy, whatever year we're in? What happened to you personally that made you think, oh, damn, this cloud thing is good?
Well, what happened was that we launched the company in 2001 thinking the cloud would happen in 2003. And we were 8 years ahead of the market. And so we've been called weird since 8 years ago. But what we learned in the process in these 8 years is that I completely agree with what Trent said in terms of easy. And the capacity, easy I think is the fundamental thing that we're going to see in all layers of the cloud. Is automation, is you just get it with one click. It's one click publish, one click staging at the PaaS level. It's one click creation of the virtual environment at the IaaS level.
And you think we're there?
I think we're getting there from bottom up. I think the first layers of the stack are being built. And as this thing kind of piles up, what we're going to see is disruption in the development tools and development environments. We have experienced that in these past years. So we're going to see very, very different application management, development, operations control at the application layer, very different from what we do today with traditional environments.
All right. And to be more personal, that I'm guessing.
Sorry?
What did the cloud do for you this week?
So this week is a hard one to call. I think yeah, I think the thing that resonates most to me is the fact that the issue that we face as an industry is how we project a message to the market which is easily translatable between vendors. Because I think the biggest challenge is, as I say, this is a divergent market at the moment in time. And whilst I agree that cloud is a disruptive technology, it's a disruption to how you can consume IT. It's not necessarily a disruptor to how you procure IT in terms of your relationships and how you want to manage things. And I disagree that it's about a loss of control as well. I think people will adopt because they want that sense of control. But what people really need, and what it's reinforced to me this week, is there is a need for transparency of who the vendors are, what's behind them, what capabilities they've got, and all the rest of it, and that they use a common way to describe that, the capability that sits behind them. Because at the end of the day, one thing that's very unique about cloud versus traditional on-premise data centers is all of a sudden you're entering an ecosystem of potentially ISVs, cloud hosting companies, maybe even resellers selling it to you. But what you want as a business user is you want a service delivery with a service expectation and performance. So you don't want that hassle of managing those different layers. You want a confidence on how that's going to be delivered. So I think the biggest thing we can do as an industry, and what's reinforced it to me this week, is in the many conversations that we've had here, where people just want to be able to simply compare and contrast the different offerings and avoid the language of a vendor and talk about the language of an industry, so people feel confident adopting their business processes.
So I'm going to go back 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, Sunday night, 2 a.m. at my house. I'm flying out the very next morning to San Francisco to meet with Treb. And I didn't know much about OpSource, so 2 a.m. I go to OpSource, got on their cloud, ran the credit card, had an instance, and was doing stuff by 2:10. So that was pretty easy, and of the top 20 cloud providers, there's only one that dramatically disappointed me. So that was an experience in the past 2 weeks. And I think the other thing that was really interesting is when the mainstreamers didn't lift their hands. And my advice to you guys is you've got all the power. And the guys that raised your hand, you're old money, you're in there and you're kind of stuck where you're at. But those that didn't raise your hand, you're new money. And if you want to drive not just us, but drive really everybody from the top system management firms all the way down, you've got the control. And I'd encourage you to push on convenience and easy and simple methodologies, all the way from the professional services to get you into a cloud environment, whether it's private, public, or a hybrid scenario. And I would also encourage you to look at your market and needs in the next 3 years forward. Don't look at now, because now you're going to fall into the trap of just trying to do a simple test case. You need to start to figure out about persistent, complex hybrid scenarios, because I think that's where a lot of folks are going to go if you're a medium to large enterprise, and you need to look at all of the different options around that.
Right, 2 weeks to beat, sir.
Last Thursday. Which today, Wednesday, yeah, so we have 6 days ago. Yeah, we had a press release at Layer Tech with a company called Kana, which is a software as a service client of ours. And we talked earlier in the informal survey here, who's implementing cloud. In this particular case, they're implementing a virtual private data center, so more of a private cloud solution. But anyway, in Kana's words, they're deploying a software as a service production application for what they call a service experience. So they provide basically customer service or help desk type software, and it's for the full customer experience using social media, pulling together all the different tool sets within that respective company, their end customer. But from a personal perspective, it was very pleasing to see a company actually, again, adopting a production environment, marketing that very successfully to their clients, and then promoting that to the marketplace. And that's a press release from them, not from us. So it's promoting. So when you talk about the survey we did informally here, who's implemented a production environment, and we don't need to do a show of hands here, but I think if you look at private cloud scenarios, there's a lot more adoption of that today, or, as we just talked about, hybrid solutions. So don't forget about hybrid. It does not have to be a one-size-fits-all type implementation.
Well, the thing that happened, I will stick with this week, so I'll be a trendsetter.
Could be joined first.
The thing that we're seeing is we've been very, very successful in things like social network applications, social gaming applications. There's been a huge amount of adoption because those are very high-stress applications. They're easier to deploy in the cloud, I think, than a lot of other things. But this week, we had a lot of interest and a lot of requests on real enterprise applications. And so what I can see is in the next 12 to 24 months, there's going to be a huge migration, I believe, to more generic enterprise applications, what we would consider the core business applications, and people moving those to the cloud, either in a private cloud or a public cloud. Either way will work actually very, very well with the type of technology that we have. So,
I actually thought you said 12 to 24 minutes. You said months, right?
Months, yes. Months is what I'm talking about, sorry. Yes, it wasn't minutes, although some people probably would like to have it happen that quickly.
Treb,
Cloud saved my back this week.
Cloud saved my
Yes,
back.
yeah. I was thinking about that just because, no, my actual back. You know, I am not part of the cloud generation. I'm a little older than that. And, you know what it's like, I was thinking about that because of Cloud Expo last year was the last time I did it. Yeah, because it's New York. What, 8:30 in the morning, I can't wait a half an hour for a cab. Javits doesn't really get on any good, so I walk over here, right? And maybe not this year because it's a little hot, but last year I walked over here from my hotel, and I had my bag with my laptop and everything in it, and my back was killing me. And I'm like, my back is killing me when I got here for this show last year because I walked a mile and a half with this big heavy bag. Well, this year I have an iPad. All my docs are sitting on the cloud. I don't have a briefcase anymore. I don't have a briefcase anymore. I walk over here, my back feels great because all I have to do is carry one little iPad. We don't even know how much, even in the last year since this last conference, how much our work environment changed. I'm watching 90 people in here tapping away on iPads. I don't even have to raise your hand. We didn't even have those at last year's Cloud Expo. And while that's a mobile device, none of that works without the central data stores of the cloud and the ability to interact with them. Our lives have changed so much in the last year. Even from our work perspective, the way we work every day has changed that it's, when we said that, we'll have a whole new set of problems next year because most of the stuff that we're talking about today will be resolved by that point. Yes, travel much lighter, that's for sure.
So I'm going to reach all the way back to this morning.
Oh, they're competitors, these CEOs.
You put me at the end. By the way, you're looking good. You're sitting up straight, Treb. So this morning I heard a story that made me grateful. Okay. Right? When you represent a company, it's amazing, but you like to hear when things are going well and not when they're not for your customers. So I met a gentleman who was from a former customer of ours. And the reason that they ceased to be a customer is that they went out of business. They were a company that built e-commerce tools for e-commerce sites. And the story he told me is we went out of business. The remains of the company were acquired. It got started again. They logged back into RightScale. By the way, they hadn't been paying our bills or the cloud infrastructure bills for several months. They locked back in, and all the servers were still running and had been serving e-commerce clients for 3 months without a hitch. So that, I think, is a success story. People talk about reliability in the cloud and so on. Great success story of somebody who kind of zoomed out and zoomed back in. Yeah.
All right, well, we'll have a vote on that, but I'm thinking that Treb won that little round because that was pretty impressive. Cloud takes away back pain.
Yeah.
Let's give these people a final thought before we have a general session in here. You should always have a final thought. We're going to see you all, I'm presuming, in November at Cloud Expo Silicon Valley. How much could possibly happen in so little time? I mean, here we are in June, we're talking about November. Should we just cancel Cloud Expo Silicon Valley? Fine, nothing's going to happen, right? Let me just what could possibly happen in 5 months in the cloud, this time starting with Michael, that we are going to enjoy?
I think the scale will continue to expand massively.
Even in 5 months?
Even in 5 months. I think new players will be introduced in 5 months. In fact, I'm fairly certain of it.
Mergers and acquisitions, even in 5 months?
Absolutely.
Anyone in this room hoping to be bought or sold? Just don't there will be some marriages after Cloud Expo. There always are. There are often some divorces, but most marriages. Treb, 5 months?
I think the variety of what you'll be able to buy in a true public environment will multiply. Cloud, up to now, has still been pretty much one size fits all. unlike traditional IT, which has a whole variety of different systems and power. And you're going to see the ability to buy the cheap, super low-end server that kind of defines your cloud environment today, up to things that would be much more competitive with a large, high-end system internally, but still at pennies on the hour. Still the way people like it, very easy, very quick, but with just a lot more power and a lot more functions. You'll pay more for it, but you won't get rid of what the people love about it, which is that immediacy, the flexibility, the ease of use that defines a good cloud environment.
Even easier by November. Cory.
I do think it'll be easier. I think the adoption rates will continue. But I think what's really going to happen is we're going to have a lot more confidence in the cloud. And I also personally am hoping for multiple cloud vendors to be very, very successful. Right now, the market is dominated by a single cloud vendor, I think, for the public cloud. And I think having more competition will be a great thing.
Right. Nothing's going to happen.
5 months. This is it's a long journey we're on. But in all seriousness, I do think, as I kind of started off with, you're going to see a lot of advancement in this orchestration of, and we're getting some technical detail of the security and compliance side of it for the public clouds, as well as the private and hybrid clouds. So literally in the next 5 months, when's the November? Is it November?
November 7th to the 10th. I thought you never asked.
Yeah, so November, I think you'll see more advancement in the whole security compliance side for the public cloud as well as the hybrid cloud. So your production applications can more readily move there. Again, in the orchestration level, so the security advancements, all that.
Lawrence, I'm going to skip you, go to Paulo, and come back to you. You watch. Paulo. That took you by surprise.
Well, no, that's fine. I think speaking from our experience also in the United States and Europe, where Europe is a little bit behind, what we see is an explosion of microclouds appearing inside the enterprise, as people believe that with the technology that's being provided now from a lot of vendors, they can replicate the experience and the level of service that vendors like Amazon and Rackspace are doing. And I don't know whether they will be successful. So I think there's going to be a little explosion where people try to do it themselves internally. And some of them will succeed, maybe because the technology is at that level. Others will fail.
But we talked about this, fail fast, couldn't be better, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of things moving, but this is one of the things we see. It's this notion that enterprises internally can create private clouds. And I don't know if that's going to be successful or not, or completely successful. I'm sure the vendors here will probably not say that. But we see that thing where they want to have the benefits of elasticity and all of those things, together with the fact that they cannot part with having the data moving outside and lack of control and things like that.
So I think it's the commercial impetus that's going to change most in the next 5 months. People are already fairly comfortable that whether they've experienced it or not, the infrastructural benefits are significant from a cost-benefit point of view. But 1st of July comes around, and Microsoft's license mobility comes into force for all these people with their enterprise agreements. So all of a sudden, the hardware issues have been addressed. Now all of a sudden they can port their on-premise licenses into the cloud, and I think that is a catalyst that other vendors will follow. So I think that's one of the most significant things that's going to happen over the next 5 months.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I think that what we're going to see in 5 months is more examples of the very complex hybrid cloud scenarios where you've got on-premise persistent parts of your architecture and off-premise for rapid scale-out or whatever the reason for into the big clouds. And not just the great examples that RightScale has, but I think companies like CA Technologies has a whole suite with their automation product to deliver that. I think they're a great candidate for it. I think also Citrix, they announced with NetScaler and CloudBridge for those of you that were Citrix Synergy a couple weeks ago. I think that's exciting technologies in 5 months in a short period of time to show some examples of the most complex hybrid cloud scenarios. So all the mainstreamers out here can say that's where I need to go and model those examples.
So we shouldn't pass in November. Keep going.
I don't think so. Yeah.
We'll see the mainstreamers there. We'll see these gentlemen here. Let's give it up, please, for our